Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Anda bersama saya Nabilah Khaleeda dan ini AWANI. Kita nak buka perbincangan kita pada hari ini dengan topik persaraan yang kini bukan lagi satu detik yang tetap tetapi semakin menjadi keputusan ekonomi yang dipengaruhi kemampuan kewangan dan realiti kos hidup yang terus meningkat. Lebih ramai rakyat bekerja melebihi usia persaraan bukan kerana pilihan tetapi kerana tekanan ekonomi, dan ini satu gambaran bahawa model simpanan dan juga pelindungan sosial tradisional mungkin tidak lagi memadai. Dan fenomena ini bukan saja muka persoalan lebih besar tentang masa depan pasaran buruh, daya saing produktiviti negara dan bagaimana generasi muda akan menempuh landscape pekerjaan yang semakin sesak dengan warga emas yang masih aktif bekerja. Dalam masa yang sama, jurang antara mereka yang bersedia dan tidak bersedia untuk persaraan semakin melebar, berpotensi menjadi bentuk baharu ketidaksamaan ekonomi pada usia tua, dengan majoriti rakyat meletakkan keselamatan kewangan sebagai faktor utama keyakinan untuk bersara nanti. Isu literasi kewangan, akses kepada nasihat kewangan profesional serta beban fiskal kerajaan dalam menampung keperluan warga emas menjadi semakin mendesak. Jadi untuk berbincang lanjut tentang perkara ini, kita bersama dengan Profesor Emeritus Dr. Barjoya Bardai, Provost Malaysia University of Science and Technology, MUST MAST. Prof, Assalamualaikum, selamat pagi. Kalau kita nak lihat data menunjukkan persaraan bukan lagi umur tetap tapi ia bergantung kepada kemampuan kewangan. Jadi pada pandangan Prof sendiri, adakah ini sebenarnya tanda sistem simpanan persaraan kita tidak lagi cukup untuk realiti kos hidup pada hari ini? Silakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Terima kasih Cik Nabilah. Masalah kita di Malaysia ni ialah kita hanya mempunyai skim KWSP sebagai asas untuk menyediakan semua orang itu bersara, dan skim KWSP ini adalah satu-satunya skim yang diharapkan untuk memenuhi keperluan setiap orang. Sedangkan sebenarnya skim KWSP ini adalah, kalau dalam pengelasan Persatuan Buruh Antarabangsa ILO, adalah skim kedua, tahap 2. Ada lagi tahap 1 yang perlu dipenuhi. Dan hari ini lebih 52% pencalon dalam KWSP mempunyai simpanan kurang RM10,000, dan 25% daripada mereka mempunyai simpanan kurang dari RM1,000. Hanya 36% yang aktif mempunyai tahap simpanan, dan matlamat simpanan hanyalah RM240,000 selama ni. Ini dinaikkan jadi RM390,000. Bila dinaikkan jadi RM390,000 pun sebenarnya seorang hanya boleh mengharapkan untuk berpencen dengan RM1,950 sebulan bila mereka bersara lagi. Sedangkan pada hari ini pun kos sara hidup adalah RM2,690 sebulan. So ini merupakan satu isu yang sangat perlu melihat bahawa kebanyakan kita tidak mampu bersara sebenarnya. Tidak mampu bersara.
Prof, bila kita bercakap tentang kemampuan untuk bersara ni, kita lihat semakin ramai rakyat jangka bekerja lebih lama kerana perlu dan bukan mahu, bukan kemahuan tapi keperluan. Jadi apa kesan dalam jangka masa panjang lah kepada pasaran buruh, peluang kerja golongan muda dan juga produktiviti negara secara keseluruhan, Prof?
Selalu dikatakan kalau ramai kumpulan yang patut bersara tidak bersara, akan wujud satu gejala apa yang dipanggil lump of labour fallacy. Maksudnya akan wujud di hujung kumpulan yang banyak atau ramai tetapi kurang produktif. Tetapi di Malaysia ni masih lagi dibuktikan bahawa produktiviti kita tidak menurun, kumpulan tua ini, dan tapi Malaysia sebenarnya menuju kepada satu masyarakat menua menjelang 2044, kita akan ada lebih daripada 20% warga Malaysia yang akan mencapai usia lebih 60 tahun. Di masa yang sama, kos kesihatan meningkat, wujud apa yang dipanggil inflasi perubatan mencecah 12.6%. Jadi ini semua akan menimbulkan kesan sosioekonomi di mana kalau warga tua terpaksa bekerja kerana pendapatan tidak mencukupi, dan 64% daripada kumpulan warga tua ini akan terus cuba bekerja walaupun mungkin mereka akan menghadapi masalah untuk mencari pekerjaan. Tapi pada hari ini kualiti pasaran buruh belum lagi terjejas.
Prof, kita nak lihat kepada kesenjangan lah, sebab jurang besar antara mereka yang bersedia dan tidak bersedia untuk persaraan. Adakah ini sebenarnya bakal menjadi bentuk baharu ketidaksamaan ekonomi pada usia tua nanti?
Ya, akan wujud satu jurang di mana ramai warga Malaysia yang tidak sanggup untuk bersara, bukan kerana mereka tidak mau bersara, tetapi kerana mereka tidak ada keupayaan untuk bersara. Hari ini dikatakan untuk bersara, mereka perlu ada sekurang-kurangnya simpanan 240,000 di dalam baki EPF. Dan kalau berasas pada itu, hanya 4% sahaja daripada rakyat Malaysia ataupun kumpulan pekerja yang boleh bersara. Itu pun kalau mereka ada 240,000, mereka akan hanya bersara dengan RM1,500 sebulan. Cukuplah, tapi agak perik jugalah maknanya.
Dan dalam data tu juga kalau kita nak saksikan antara yang dinyatakan adalah 71% mengatakan keselamatan kewangan menjadi faktor utama untuk yakin bersara. Jadi adakah ini menunjukkan sebenarnya literasi kewangan dan juga akses kepada nasihat kewangan masih terlalu rendah di Malaysia, ataupun Prof ada pandangan lain?
Ya, maknanya memanglah, sebenarnya kebanyakan kumpulan pekerja dan isi rumah menyedari bahawa mereka memerlukan satu tabungan untuk bersara. Tetapi kalau kita lihat dari segi praktik, 71% rakyat Malaysia itu menyimpan kurang dari RM500 sebulan, menandakan bahawa mereka gagal sebenarnya merancang keuangan jangka panjang. Dan 67% hanya mempunyai simpanan kecemasan 3 bulan atau kurang. Dan ini mungkin berkait dengan sikap mereka lebih yakin dengan takdir dan menunggu takdir Allah, ataupun mungkin ini kerana mereka tidak kurang didedahkan dengan aspek perancangan keuangan. Tetapi akhirnya perancangan keuangan ini boleh jadi satu yang baik, cuma pelaksanaannya akan bergantung kepada keupayaan. Kalau misalnya kita lihat di Malaysia, lebih 50% daripada kumpulan yang bekerja mempunyai gaji kurang daripada RM3,000 sebulan. Jadi berapa banyakkah yang mereka berjimatkan daripada RM3,000 itu kerana kos sara hidup yang kita sebut tadi RM2,690 sebulan. Jadi inilah menjadi isunya, dan kita perlu jawapan yang lebih berjangka panjang, insya-Allah.
Baik Prof, saya nak selitkan satu soalan yang terakhir mungkin dalam 1 minit. Kalaulah trend tangguh persaraan ini berterusan, adakah kerajaan akan berdepan tekanan fiskal yang lebih besar pada masa depan dari sudut mungkin bantuan warga emas, kesihatan awam dan juga perlindungan sosial, Prof?
Ya, pastinya, kerana hari ini Malaysia hanya membelanjakan 0.37% daripada KDNK untuk penjagaan warga emas, dan ini jauh lebih rendah daripada purata OECD 8%. Begitu juga kita tengok tadi inflasi kesihatan 12.6%. Ketidaksamaan meningkat 5.4% menjelang 2043 dan 8.5% menjelang 2056. Jadi secara keseluruhannya kita perlu melakukan sesuatu yang jitu untuk jangka panjang untuk memperbaiki keadaan ini.
Terima kasih diucapkan kepada Profesor Emeritus Dr. Badroya Bardai, Provos Malaysia University of Science and Technology MAS atas analisis mendalam tentang trend rakyat menangguhkan persaraan akibat kos hidup, jurang simpanan dan juga cabaran fiskal negara. Baik, saya akan teruskan dengan perkembangan seterusnya berkenaan dengan ringgit. Pengukuhan nilai ringgit berbanding dolar Amerika Syarikat disifatkan sebagai perkembangan positif ekonomi Malaysia sekaligus memberi manfaat langsung kepada rakyat dan sektor perniagaan serta pelaburan negara. Timbalan Menteri Pelaburan, Perdagangan dan Industri Sim Zin berkata, prestasi mata wang tempatan yang kembali ke paras lebih kukuh mencerminkan keyakinan pelabur asing terhadap kestabilan ekonomi negara.
Ujar beliau ketika awal pentadbiran Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, nilai ringgit pernah berada sekitar RM4.50 berbanding dolar Amerika sebelum mengukuh ke paras kira-kira RM3.89 ketika ini. Pengukuhan ini katanya menunjukkan aliran masuk pelaburan asing yang semakin meningkat, selain kemasukan pelancong antarabangsa yang terus menyumbang kepada pertumbuhan ekonomi domestik. Beliau sifatkan nilai ringgit ketika ini berada pada paras selesa dan stabil ketika ini dan berharap kenaikan ini membawa kebaikan kepada rakyat. Sim berkata antara manfaat utama kepada rakyat khususnya dalam sektor pertanian dan pembuatan ialah peningkatan kuasa beli apabila harga barangan import seperti baja, mesin termasuk bahan mentah menjadi lebih stabil. Katanya apabila kos import menjadi lebih terkawal, ia akan membantu menstabilkan harga makanan dan mengurangkan tekanan kenaikan kos sara hidup rakyat. Selain itu, sektor pembuatan turut menerima manfaat apabila kos pembelian mesin dan teknologi dari luar negara menjadi lebih kompetitif sekaligus meningkatkan produktiviti industri tempatan. Beliau berkata kestabilan mata wang turut menyumbang kepada persekitaran ekonomi yang lebih mantap selain membantu memastikan harga barangan pengguna tidak meningkat secara mendadak. Mengulas mengenai prospek ringgit sepanjang tahun ini, Sim menjangkakan mata wang tempatan akan terus berada pada paras stabil tanpa turun naik secara mendadak. Katanya pengukuhan melampau juga boleh memberi tekanan kepada sektor pengeksport. Justru paras masa dianggap selesa dan seimbang untuk pertumbuhan ekonomi.
Hari ini merupakan hari pertama umat Islam di seluruh negara memulakan ibadah puasa bagi bulan Ramadan 2026. Seperti biasa, Ramadan juga menjadi antara musim paling penting buat usahawan sama ada dalam sektor makanan, peruncitan, logistik, perkhidmatan digital dan pelbagai lagi. Jadi untuk memahami strategi dan persediaan usahawan tahun ini, kita bersama Datuk Seri Abu Hassan Maknur, Presiden Dewan Perniagaan Usahawan Malaysia. Assalamualaikum, selamat pagi Datuk Seri.
Selamat pagi.
Baik,
Terima
Alhamdulillah.
kasih jemput saya lain sekali.
Sama-sama juga. Terima kasih kerana sudi
Terima
bersama
kasih.
dengan kami di Niaga Awani dalam
Ya.
studio. Mungkin kalau kita nak buka perbincangan kita lah, kita nak
Okey.
lihat terlebih dahulu trend dan juga jangkaan pada Ramadan tahun ini. Kalau mungkin Datuk Seri boleh kongsikan apa sebenarnya trend perniagaan yang Datuk Seri jangkakan untuk Ramadan kali ini, mungkin dari segi tingkah laku pengguna ataupun pola perbelanjaan kalau kita nak bandingkan dengan Ramadan-Ramadan yang sebelum ini.
Okey, terima kasih sekali lagi Niaga AWANI menjemput saya dan juga saya ucapkan salam Ramadan.
Mhm.
Pertama sekali kepada usahawan yang dekat luar tu kan.
Mhm.
Jadi trend dia biasalah kalau bulan Ramadan ni.
Mhm.
Pertama sekali orang target bazar Ramadan,
Betul. Mhm.
F&B, lepas tu ada sikit-sikit tekstil kan, kosmetik, spa kan, nak kecantikan kan, nak raya kan.
Nak raya.
Itu
Betul.
yang paling hot lah. Lepas tu sebelum Ramadan pun sekarang dah gembar-gembor. Sebelum Ramadan ni, dengan baju Melayu dia, dengan tudung dia, dengan masing-masing lah dalam media sosial kan, hiburkan tentang Ramadan yang akan datang, yang nak disambut. Jadi saya di bawah platform Dewan ni, memang kita alu-alukan kepada peniaga-peniaga yang kata orang tu nak mencari rezeki. Dalam bulan Ramadan yang mulia ni, saya rasa inilah target dia orang. Dalam sebulan berniaga, setahun tak payah berniaga.
Ada juga macam
Ada
tu.
juga, ada juga macam tu kan. Ada juga yang betul-betul dia fokus. Fokus maknanya apa yang tindakan dia nak buat masa Ramadan. Jadi mungkin dalam sebulan ke dia akan prepare untuk bazar ke, jualan ke, ataupun dalam sosial media kan, iklan-iklan dia, pamerkan produk masing-masing lah. Jadi saya rasa tahun ni lebih hebat lagi. Mungkin perancangan yang rapi dan telah buat kan. Jadi saya memang sokong lah Dan juga di pihak agensi dan kementerian juga banyak membantu daripada segi dana bantuan terutama sekali tekun yang banyak membantu dalam skim barakat kalau peniaga nak berniaga dalam bazar Ramadan ni dia akan bagi dana sampai 30,000
Ya.
IP dia orang kan. Dia orang kena
Mana tak
prepare je,
seronok
mana tak seronok
Mm-mm.
Jadi itulah yang saya ucapkan ribuan terima kasih juga kepada agensi dan juga kementerian yang banyak juga membantu kepada usahawan kita, terutama sekali dekat luar sana kan. Dan juga strategik dia macam-macam lah untuk yang ada yang nak beli mesin, nak buat kuih raya nak macam-macam. Dan rare sekali tepung pelita dalam bulan Ramadan ni semua keluar. Jadi sementara itu untuk menambah baikkan ekonomi. Sama sekali daripada segi keluarga dia ataupun masyarakat setempat menikmati kemudahan tu, menikmati kemudahan tu yang kata orang tu jarang-jarang yang didapati pada hari-hari lain. Bulan Ramadan ni yang
Ya,
ada.
memang
Itu yang ada
special
target
sikit.
kan. Tapi saya syorkanlah kalau dalam bidang perniagaan ni maknanya kuih raya ke apa kita buatkan secara bukan musim puasa dan raya saja, kita buat jadikan income sampai kita punya bisnes daripada kecil sampai ke besar.
Tapi Datuk Seri ada juga yang mungkin terutama yang F&B ni lah, bila bulan puasa ni mungkin menghadapi cabaran sedikit. Selalunya time lunch hour, pekerja-pekerja di syarikat-syarikat datang makan masa tengah hari lah, makan tengah hari. Tapi bila bulan puasa ni kurang sedikit. Jadi ini antara cabaran buat mereka yang terutama tak ada buat jualan di bazar Ramadan dan sebagainya. Jadi apa strategi lah untuk mereka usahawan-usahawan terutama di sektor F&B ni yang paling kritikal untuk urus permintaan mereka?
Jadi kalau waktu biasa tu mungkinlah tengah hari duk makan kan. Jadi janganlah Ramadan ni kita ada beg hitam pula kan. Jangan disiulkan. Jadi mungkin strategik tu dia akan cara berbeza. Dalam masa sebulan ni kan. Mungkin dia akan waktu dan masa dia tu mungkin kalau bazar Ramadan dia akan buka dalam pukul 4 petang kan. Sehingga sampai pukul 8 dan waktu Tarawih dia orang ada sistem lah, dia dah susun, bukannya kali pertama dalam bidang perniagaan ni kan. Jadi strategik begitu macam mungkin dia penambahbaikan kan ataupun daripada segi pekerja, tambahkan pekerja waktu yang singkat tu kan. Jadi mungkin manpower lagi ramai, jadi mungkin cepat dia punya perjalanan tu untuk menguruskan. Tapi kalau lagi singkat lagi, nak raya lagilah sampai larut malam berniaga kan. Untuk nak sambutkan raya. Itu perancangan tu dia kena perlu buat betul-betul lah.
Lebih sistematik dan sebagainya. Tapi antara dari segi penambahan tenaga kerja, satu lagi usahawan-usahawan kita tahun 2026 ni banyak kita lihat diorang guna digitalisasi lah. Digitalisasi dan juga ni AI. AI. Jadi kalau pandangan Datuk Seri lah, bagaimana Datuk Seri melihat penggunaan teknologi dalam kalangan usahawan kita, terutama bagaimana boleh manfaatkan penggunaan digitalisasi dan juga AI, dan mungkin apa alat digital yang usahawan patut ataupun wajib dah ada dah pada Ramadan kali ini?
Jadi saya suka nyatakan di sini AI ni bagus ataupun sistem online ni bagus, tetapi offline dan online ni maknanya offline ni reality. Kita nampak benda tu kan. Kalau AI ni mungkin daripada segi sistem dia punya tu mungkin kita nampak benda tu macam real, tapi bila kita pergi kadang-kadang berbeza. Ada juga yang begitu. Tetapi saya syorkan offline dan online ni kena ada sama. Mungkin dia sistem yang mungkin dalam rangkaian kan, pemilikan dia order, hantar barang, cara pergi ke rumah kan. Kadang-kadang ada juga saya terkena juga Nabilah. Kadang-kadang saya order ni datang, saya ingat mesin tu besar lah. Sekali datang yang mainan punya kan. Kecil je. Apa benda ni?
Kena tengok betul-betul tu Datuk Seri.
Jadi kadang-kadang mungkin tertekan ke apa ke kan. Jadi benda-benda begini memang perlu kita lihat juga. Tapi kalau daripada offline ni kita tengok real secara macam kita ni kan old school sikit. Kita kena tengok kedai, pergi kedai tengok betul tak nisyak yang benda-benda begini secara original dia ada depan mata. Jadi saya tak nafikan daripada segi sistem media sosial ni memang laju jualan dia. Kadang-kadang saya tekan, tengok 5 minit dah berapa ribu, 10 minit dah berapa ribu. Wah, dahsyat. Dia punya dia mendadak sale dia.
Ya.
Kan? Memang lajulah. Jadi itu pembaikan baik dia dalam sistem media sosial, tetapi kita kena perlu hati-hati juga. Kita tengok dulu keadaan produk tu bagaimana. Kalau kita order lain datang lain pula. Yang tu yang perlu kita tengok sendiri. Macam mana.
Itu kena dari segi bergantung kepada kebijaksanaan lah. Kebijaksanaan dan juga literasi perniagaan setiap usahawan itu sendiri. Kalau mereka yang pandai ataupun pandai dari segi percaturan ataupun strategi, bulan puasa ni memang dah cover satu tahun punya untung.
Betul.
Ada yang memang meniaga pada bulan Ramadan saja.
Ya.
Dan ada mungkin yang tak biasa pada bulan Ramadan akan rasa terbeban sikit. Tapi bila cakap soal bebanan ataupun cabaran, kos operasi itu menjadi satu kebimbangan lah. Kan? Kalau kita nak cakap soal inflasi, kenaikan harga barang, kalau sebelum ini yang terakhir adalah 1.6 pada bulan 12 tahun lalu 2025, dan untuk bulan 1 akan keluar tengah hari sekejap lagi. Jadi mungkin ada kenaikan lah walaupun sedikit, dan pakar ekonomi kata pun masih dalam keadaan terkawal. Mungkin apa yang Datuk Seri boleh jangkakan akan memberi kesan kepada lonjakan ataupun dari segi kos operasi untuk setiap usahawan itu?
Dia beginilah, ini rata-rata bukan Malaysia saja, dunia. Ekonomi ni kan macam pendedakan barang, bahan mentah, tepung, gula, semua ni kan memang diperlukan pada waktu begini. Daripada segi servis perkhidmatan pun sama juga.
Pakaian pun
Baju
sama.
raya. Baju raya semua mendadak kan. Tetapi kita kena plan dan kita kena kontrol macam mana kita nak imbangkan balik kan. Mungkin kalau simple je Nabilah, kalau kita beli banyak harga dia murah, kalau kita beli 1-2 harga dia mahal kan. Tetapi kalau lambakan yang banyak tu mungkin daripada segi pemborong, pembekal ni kan, kita boleh dapatkan lebih murah. Jadi mungkin kita tak perlu risau sangat kalau kita plan awal-awal. Mungkin kita dah tahu mungkin raya tak lama lagi ataupun puasa dah hari ni yang pertama kali kan, first time puasa. Jadi kita plan, sebulan kita plan apa yang kita beli, kita belilah banyak-banyak, dapatlah murah sikit. Ekonomi tu tak payah tinggi. Contoh dia macam satu usahawan saya ni, dia satu tempat dia dapat, dia bannerkan bangunan untuk nak menjangkau pada raya dan puasa ni kan. Dia buat satu kedai mewah. Kedai tu kata orang tu kalau dalam bulan Ramadan ni mungkin kita boleh buat buffet, kita boleh buat apa kan. Tapi masa awal ni pun dia dah habis sampai 300-400 ribu untuk bannerkan benda tu, untuk semata-mata untuk Ramadan. Dia buat dekat batik nama Cili Cili Village nama dia. Jadi saya kata, apa nasihat Datuk untuk ni? Saya kata you kena buat program, kena buat macam aktiviti kan, bubur lambuk ke ataupun buffet cara murah. Murah je, jangan mahal. Pasal area-area rural area ni, macam kawasan pedalaman ataupun kawasan luar bandar ni, jangan letak yang mahal. Mungkin buffet sini sampai satu kepala 200-300. Kalau kat sana mungkin RM15, RM20. Mungkin orang akan datang. Jadi ini satu cara untuk kita nak menaikkan sesuatu perniagaan itu, untuk orang lebih ramai lagi datang. Mungkin sedap, rasa dia pun menarik ataupun kedai dia yang hebat, yang ni orang akan datang. Mungkin kos tu kita tambah baik lagi. Mungkin sebulan ke 6 bulan ni mungkin plan tu tak berapa lagi mendapat keuntungan.
Betul.
Mungkin lepas pada tu.
Memang saya nak minta Datuk Seri bagi nasihat tadi sebenarnya sebagai penutup perbincangan, tapi Datuk Seri dah jawab pun dengan mengurangkan harga makanan tu kita kurangkan, terutama untuk mereka anak-anak muda lah ataupun usahawan baru yang nak mulakan perniagaan pada awal Ramadan ini sebagai permulaan kecil. Mungkin kawal dari segi kos pemasaran, pengurusan modal dan juga pengurusan risiko. Jadi terima kasih diucapkanlah kepada Datuk Seri Abu Hassan, Presiden Dewan Perniagaan Usaha Malaysia, kerana bersama dengan kami untuk kongsi pandangan. Dan semoga Ramadan tahun ini membawa lebih rezeki, peluang dan juga keberkatan kepada semua usahawan di Malaysia. Dan kami ucapkan selamat menjalani ibadah puasa. Dan banyak lagi yang akan kita kongsikan selepas ini bersama dengan rakan tugas. Jadi kita berhenti rehat seketika, kembali selepas ini.
Saya pilih Unify Business.
Mereka ada penyelesaian untuk kejayaan yang lebih jelas. Unify G Business Mobile, majukan saya. Go Bukit, uruskan segalanya.
Internet grade perniagaan, meluaskan rangkaian.
Solusi pemasaran digital, melebarkan capaian. Layanan prioriti, menyinarkan lagi perniagaan.
Perkembangan digital meningkat pantas dengan program Impact Biz.
Tingkatkan perniagaan anda dengan Unify Business hari ini.
Aiskrim Cadbury Hazelnut baru. Anda pasti terpikat.
Saya pilih Unify Business.
Mereka ada penyelesaian untuk kejayaan yang lebih jelas. Unify G Business Mobile, majukan saya. Go Bukit, uruskan segalanya.
Internet grade perniagaan, meluaskan rangkaian.
Solusi pemasaran digital, melebarkan capaian. Layanan prioriti, menyinarkan lagi perniagaan.
Perkembangan digital meningkat pantas dengan program Impact Biz.
Tingkatkan perniagaan anda dengan Unify Business hari ini.
Buli di sekolah. Isu ini bukan perkara baru.
Buli tertakluk kepada perbuatan agresif secara fizikal.
Apa sebenarnya Jerabu punca utama yang menyumbang kepada masalah ini serta kesannya kepada kesihatan kita?
Mereka akan mengalami iritasi kepada mata. Selain itu, iritasi kepada saluran pernafasan.
Saya pilih Unify Business.
Mereka ada penyelesaian untuk kejayaan yang lebih jelas. Unify G Business Mobile, majukan saya. Go Bukit, uruskan segalanya.
Internet grade perniagaan, meluaskan rangkaian.
Solusi pemasaran digital, melebarkan capaian. Layanan prioriti, menyinarkan lagi perniagaan.
Perkembangan digital meningkat pantas dengan program Impact Biz.
Tingkatkan perniagaan anda dengan Unify Business hari ini.
Kementerian Pendidikan bertanggungjawab sepenuhnya terhadap keselamatan murid dan pelajar sewaktu mereka di sekolah.
Malaysia dan Korea Selatan terus memperkukuh kerjasama dalam bidang teknologi hijau dan kecerdasan buatan AI menerusi pelaburan dua syarikat utama Republik itu.
SPRM akan meneliti dan menjalankan siasatan sekiranya dapat unsur rasuah dalam pelaksanaan projek aerotrain di KLIA yang dilaporkan sering mengalami gangguan perkhidmatan.
Saya pilih Unify Business.
Mereka ada penyelesaian untuk kejayaan yang lebih jelas. Unify G Business Mobile, majukan saya. Go Bukit, uruskan segalanya.
Internet grade perniagaan, meluaskan rangkaian.
Solusi pemasaran digital, melebarkan capaian. Layanan prioriti, menyinarkan lagi perniagaan.
Perkembangan digital meningkat pantas dengan program Impact Biz.
Tingkatkan perniagaan anda dengan Unify Business hari ini.
Hamas says it is fully prepared to hand over administrative authority in Gaza to a newly formed Palestinian Technocratic Committee. The US president cannot threaten his way into owning Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark.
Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tamina Kausji. Niaga Spotlight takes us through the week in economic analysis and future affairs. Now today on Future Affairs, our spotlight falls on tech, productivity and food security. So, Malaysia's push to raise the ceiling under Ekonomi Madani is increasingly coming down to one factor alone, productivity. At Forum Economy Malaysia, the FEM, last week, a few realities were emphasized. A food import bill of over 70 billion ringgit a year, climate volatility cutting into domestic yields, and an economy still too concentrated downstream. The challenge now is whether Malaysian companies can move upstream by applying technology, owning intellectual property IP, and also turning innovation into real economic resilience. One company already doing that on the ground is Carbotech, a Malaysian nanotechnology firm developing crop solutions that improve photosynthesis, plant efficiency, and this is also at a crucial time when climate stress can reduce agricultural yields nationwide by up to 20%. Backed by Khazana's Dana Impact, its work is beginning to show how productivity gains have the potential to become a strategic advantage. Joining us on Niaga Spotlight live in the studios now is Amirul Merakan, co-founder and chief operating officer of Carbotech, to dig deeper. A very good morning, Amirul. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here. It's truly an honor.
Absolutely. Such a pleasure and a delight to have you on to discuss a little bit more about the good work Carbotech is doing. So, Amirul, let's get started by talking about the fact that Malaysia, even though we have such strong agricultural fundamentals, and I'm sure you could tell us more about that, having traveled the breadth of the country for your work, but we are still a net food importer. So tell us about how actually the idea behind everything which Carbotech does came around and the interventions that are available now to ensure that we don't continue remaining a net food importer.
Yeah, that is a very important question, Tamina.
Mm-hmm.
So in Malaysia, whenever we go down on the ground, when we speak to these farmers, the farmers will say the same thing again and again.
Right.
Every year, their yield will decline. And for them, most of them, what they do is they would put more chemical fertilizers onto the land.
Right.
And this then would make the land more infertile. And then the cycle repeats. The land becomes infertile and the yield will become less and less over time. So some of them even would leave the agricultural industry because it is inconsistent yield, inconsistent income for them. They would not continue to do that. And that is why young generations, they don't have the tendency to go into the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So at Carbotech, as mentioned, what we have is a photosynthesis enhancing technology.
Right.
So Dr. Suraya, our chief scientist and founder, patented a technology to derive this carbon quantum dots. So carbon quantum dots is essentially small fragments of carbon.
Okay.
It is derived from agricultural waste, all the things that you throw out, like empty fruit bunch, rice husk, whatever that you get out.
All the discards.
All the discards. We then turn that into small fragments of carbon. And when this is at a very small scale, it possesses a photoluminescence property.
Mm-hmm.
It is able to convert ultraviolet into blue light spectrum. Maybe I'll show you how it looks like.
Yes, please. So this is basically something that you would take out on the ground when you are meeting potential partners, such as farmers and smallholders.
Just to get them an understanding of how it looks like.
All right.
So
run us through it.
The carbon does is it converts the ultraviolet, which is abundant by the sun, and convert it into blue light spectrum that the plants can then utilize and use. So this is ultraviolet torchlight, and this is water. It will just go through.
Okay.
With our technology, it converts it into blue light spectrum.
Ah, there you go. You see the photoluminescence in the second sample.
Blue light spectrum. And what is the importance of this? So with too much UV, it will cause heat stress to the farm, to the plants.
Right. That's when they basically sort of burn. Wilt.
Yes. So just like as our skin, we put UV protection so that we don't get skin conditions, skin damage.
Sure.
So with plants, we apply it onto the leaves. The abundance ultraviolet, the unutilized ultraviolet, is then being converted into blue light. So it's an extra energy source for the plant to carry out the process photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is very important. Photosynthesis is how the plants make their food.
Mm-hmm.
It's how they convert carbon dioxide, water, turn it into oxygen that we breathe, and carbohydrates for them to grow. So when they grow faster, quicker, more resilient, that then equals to more stable harvest for the farmers, and for us Malaysian, more food on the table. And that is why our work helps this farmer get more food.
Absolutely. So coming from the work which Carbotech has been doing then, Amirul, let's move into discussing a little more about the next step. So this basically also means farming can be repositioned as more of a high-value, innovation-led industry in Malaysia. Which sectors within agriculture in particular have you seen being the most stressed, especially by climate-related changes in the past few years?
So we just concluded our 2000 paddy project in Penang.
2,000. Okay.
2,000 hectares paddy project in Penang.
Amazing.
So this paddy, again, as mentioned earlier, farmers will complain that their yield will keep on declining.
Year on year.
Year on year, the per hectare would reduce from 4 tons to 3 tons per hectare, reducing to 2 tons even. So this is because of many factors. One of it is climate. Back then, the farmers were able to predict sunny season would be this time of the year, rainy season would be this time of the year. So they then would be able to curate whatever that they plant on whatever weather they think would be for that particular season.
Fair enough. Life was pretty predictable for the farming seasons. Yeah.
So the importance of our work, we then bring data for this farmer. We moved away from guesswork. We moved away from farmers guessing, maybe for this time we do this, we do that, we put this agricultural input. So our technology are able to withstand both the cloudy season as well as the sunny season. So during cloudy weathers, raining season, there's still UV present around the environment. This UV would be converted into the blue light for the plants to still carry out the process photosynthesis. And when they still continue to do that, they still continue to grow. And then they are able to then get consistent results. Similarly, during the sunny or drought season, where the direct sunlight is too much, this then would cause heat stress. The heat wave that you see across different states would make the plant not grow, shy away from growing, wilt, but this UV, we convert into a lower energy, which is blue light, or the plants then are able to still continue growing without too much exposure to UV. So that is what the technology is doing. So we are moving away from all the guessing from the farmers to more science-driven, more experimental, more collection of data. So just like the 2,000 hectares project that we did in Penang, we work with drone operators. So the drone are able to then spray across our product into the paddy field, and we know exactly the volume used. We do drone mapping, satellite imaging to capture the multispectral images. So what does multispectral images do? It is able to then tell you what happens between the control and treated plot, how much more photosynthesis is happening. We then have team of agronomists go down on the ground to collect more data. When we collect all this data, when we measure photosynthesis, we are able to then predict better what would happen if a certain conditions happen. So we move away from guesswork to more evidence-based, science-driven, and then that then equals to farmers getting more consistent, higher yield for us all, basically. Because from the farm level, that is where they are producing the food that we all consume. If not, the whole supply would be much less and food prices would soar up higher.
Yes, higher than they already are. And specifically what you spoke about, the 2,000 hectare paddy project, Amirul, it really stands out to me because our rice bowl state, Kedah, for example, currently also suffering from an ongoing heat wave. And also in recent years, paddy yields were 40% lower than average, which also causes so many downstream impacts on the farmers themselves. So besides paddy, which other high-value crops does Carbotech also work with or have an interest in expanding towards?
So we start with paddy because we had a 500 hectares project in Indonesia. So with that data, we then went to Malaysia and said, hey, let's try on paddy since we already have this data. So with other crops, fruiting vegetable, chili, brinjal, cucumber, we are all doing that with a lot of smallholder farmers across Malaysia. Fruits like melons, durian even, we are spraying our photosynthesis on them. We are now moving towards the palm oil industry, but with palm oil industry, they are not applying it onto the leaf. They are not deploying drone, so we need to then have additional operational costs for them. So maybe for palm oil industry, we then target the nursery phase first, or we do experiments of in-soil adoption of our technology.
So very interesting. So there's an opportunity also to scale it around a different vertical. Fascinating. So overall, what kind of resilience are you seeing build across the food system, especially when it comes to the farmers and the smallholders who have already been working with you for a while, Amirul?
Yeah. So just to then go back onto the 2,000 hectares paddy project,
Sure.
what does this mean to the farmers? They were able to see 15 to 30% increase in the yield. So that is an increase from 3 tons to 4 tons per hectare, so an additional a ton per hectare. When that then happens, more income for the farmers, more food for us, and that then trickles up to us having more secure food production in Malaysia. So similarly with crops like melons, what we are seeing, more grade A fruits are being produced with more photosynthesis, enhanced photosynthesis. And interestingly, what we are also seeing for melons or even pineapples, they want to have sweeter fruits. So with more photosynthesis, as how we have already know, more carbohydrates are in the plants. So when there are more carbohydrates, the fruit itself becomes sweeter. So then that gives them a level up higher to grade A. For this farmer, it means they are able to sell at a higher price.
Exactly.
More income for them, and that more stable. And we keep these farmers in the agricultural space instead of them saying, hey, I can't predict what is going to happen to what I am planting. I want to leave the space. So now with new technology and ability for them to predict what is going to happen, what kind of income they should be expecting to get after harvesting, they then would be more interested to stay in the agricultural landscape.
Exactly. So more interested to stay in the agricultural landscape. And I must ask you this before we go for a short break. How do farmers find you, or are you the one identifying as Carbotech which future agricultural partners you want to work with?
Yeah, it's a different way and how we approach these farmers. Back then, we used to do it organically. We go down on the ground, we have a team of agronomists to meet this farmer and then introduce our technology. It's a lot of awareness because it's a new category on its own.
Sure.
We are not selling fertilizer. We are not crop management like
None of the
pesticide.
usual
None of the
solutions.
usual. We are looking at the leaves. We are making the leaf work better. A lot of the other players sizing what we do, advertising what we do, even showcasing what we have. More farmers would be more aware of the technology that is available here in Malaysia for them to use.
Absolutely. Amirul, thank you very much for the insights and so far. Well, don't go anywhere. We'll take a brief break and we'll be right back with the rest of the interview only here on Niaga Spotlight.
Hamas says it is fully prepared to hand over administrative authority in Gaza to a newly formed Palestinian Technocratic Committee. The US president cannot threaten his way into owning Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark.
Welcome back to Niaga Spotlight, still with me, Tamina Kausji, and today the topic we're discussing all about tech productivity and food security with Amirul Murakan, who is co-founder as well as Chief Operating Officer of Carbotech. Now, Amirul, so digging deeper into the nanotechnology aspects of Carbotech and also talking about raising the ceiling when it comes to Malaysian agri-tech players. When it comes to owning intellectual property, this is still an area where we could be doing a lot better. Some perspectives on this, particularly coming from what you have learned through Carbotech's journey over the past couple of years.
So it is very important that we have our own R&D and intellectual property when it comes to agri-tech, agriculture, or even in any technology for that matter. Why is it important? Because if we are reliant on what the other countries are doing, we become the adopters of their technology. We then basically rely on their own timeline, their prices, and whatever that works well for their country. So say, for example, when it comes to our nanotechnology, we curate it best for the Malaysian farmers. So we go down on the ground, we understand what is actually happening with the field. We saw it work in lab. Now we bring whatever that we saw in the lab onto the field. We get the farm to validate what we saw at the lab. So by doing that, we get a technology that is curated for Malaysian farmers. And that then would make Malaysian farmers able to produce more. So this is very important because a lot of the technology that we adopt are all curated for that particular country. Maybe it works well for us, maybe it doesn't. So for us, it is good to have a homegrown technology for Malaysian-owned agricultural landscape.
Exactly, because there is a limit to the localization that can be had when you're bringing in an IP from even a neighboring ASEAN country, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about when it comes to economic impact. What kind of economic impact have you heard from the agricultural partners who are willing to take on Carbotex technology, and how many maybe growth cycles or farming cycles do they have to wait before they are able to see some tangible benefits?
Yeah. So for the economic impact, so beyond Malaysia and even within Malaysia, we work with distributor. The distributor, they want to onboard our product into their portfolio because it doesn't compete with the other agricultural input. These farmers still require to fertilize, they still require to purchase all the other chemicals, all the other inputs. But on top of that, there is a new line of product. So for this farmer, this means new revenue for them. So that is for the distributor angle. But for the farmers, we did our cost benefit analysis on how much it costs per hectare. It's about 300 ringgit. And if they get a ton improvement per hectare, they are getting about 1,500 ringgit. So an ROI of about 5 times for these farmers. But then
that's a really important data point.
Yeah.
ROI of 1 to 5.
Yes. So then that is what we are seeing for 2,000 hectares. In Malaysia itself, there are about 500,000 hectares of paddy being planted in Malaysia. So we are just starting with 2,000. So we're getting more and more people to adopt. And if we are able to get and make this land become more productive, per hectare increase higher, then we're getting more supply of this and not having to rely on other countries to give us the food for us to consume.
Exactly, because also importantly, as you'd mentioned earlier, Carbotex product does actually help to increase the quality, meaning that you can now have a higher grade output of the agricultural produce. So moving from there, I think it would be remiss for us not to discuss Dana Impact's involvement. Tell us about that partnership, which has also helped Carbotech to not only strengthen capabilities, but also accelerate the rollout to this stage.
We're very much indebted and grateful for Dana Impact support. It really helped us accelerate our R&D. So we need to make sure it works in the lab. So we have our own internal testings, we test it on our own hydroponics. So that helps us to accelerate that and then bring it to the field. So we need to then trial across many crops. So with the funding, we were able to conduct these trials, these tests with the farms where we spray a treated plot and we leave a control plot to then make comparison. With this data, then we will be able to then analyze what is actually happening and validating what we are seeing in the lab. With Dana Impact support as well, we were able to get more advertisement, more people to be in the know of what we have, and that is very important. It's hard for us to just showcase what we have. People don't know what we do, but with Dana Impact backing us, they give us a credibility for these farmers to believe, okay, maybe I'll give it a try. So just that step, then that helped us get more trial, more data on the table for us then to analyze and see how best can we curate better for these farmers to improve their yield, to improve their harvest.
Exactly. And now when it comes to some of the adoption challenges, would you be able to share about how you overcame that, particularly when it comes to technology introduction first and then regularize adoption for the agricultural players?
Yeah, that has always been our obstacle. Whenever we go down on the ground where we have our community sharing, where we gather farmers and then we share what we have. Sometimes we bring other UPM products with us, other UPM researchers with us to showcase what they have to help this farmer. But what we see is, of course, them being very hesitant on new things because they always know that whatever that they are doing, that is how they have been doing, that is the things that they need to purchase, it should work. And then they complain that the yield reduced because they're not wanting to adopt new technology. So for us, it's always first about awareness, getting their buy-in. So it starts with one farmer having their buy-in, and from that word of mouth, then more farmers would be able to then adopt and see for themselves how it improves their field. So that is the first obstacle that we go through. And once we get them to adopt, some they don't really follow the practices or the recommendations that we give to them. So then that is where our agronomists would then help them, handhold them. Okay, hey, this is how we dilute it. This is how we apply it onto the field. That is how we observe what is actually happening. And then we bring our own tools like LICO to measure photosynthesis and see for themselves what is actually happening with their plants, with their crops.
Exactly. It's about giving them a perspective and also that comparison of the control crop versus the treated crop. So moving the lens a little wider, Amirul, what are the near future plans for Carbotech, Malaysia and beyond as well?
Yeah. So we are now, of course, just starting with the 2,000 that I mentioned earlier, 2,000 hectares paddy project. We want to have more states to adopt our technology, to have more share on that 500,000 paddy in Malaysia, moving away from paddy to other crops in Malaysia so that we are more food secure. Beyond that, we are also growing regionally. We are going into Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, and also globally. We have US clients that are purchasing our technology, and we are hoping from the Series A fundraising round that we are doing at the moment that would accelerate our global expansion. And just yesterday itself, we were announced winner of AUTM Better World Project. It's Association of University showcasing many different projects, many different research across the world. And the finalists were us, Malaysia, Hong Kong, as well as in the US, New York. And we were awarded the grand prize. We won that Better World project, that just showcasing and the world recognizing our technology from Malaysia. And we hope to get more people globally to adopt this technology.
Exactly. Like heartiest congratulations on that, because it's a really good start to the rest of the year. And as you mentioned, of course, it is about scaling it rapidly across Malaysia as well, while you're expanding regionally. One interesting data point that I picked up was that in the year 2024, agritech actually increased by about 3% across the country. Sabah in particular was the state adopting agritech most quickly across the various different sectors. So we also do see, aside from heat stress, we also see flooding stress, help damage communities as well as farming yields. What opportunities might there be to expand the kind of technology that Carbotech has, or even the application outside of just heat stress related issues? Because we're also seeing, together with the heat stress and the drought, there also comes the parallel of extreme flooding that happens sometimes soon after.
Yeah, it takes a whole ecosystem to come together to help these farmers. So we cannot, for us, our technology, it helps to withstand the different unpredictable weather.
In general.
Yeah. So there are researchers also in UPM in other parts of Malaysia that are working at other technologies. So we need to gather all this technology, have a funnel or have a channel for this farm to know that there is such technology available, homegrown here in Malaysia, for them to use and see if it helps with climate stress, flooding stress, or maybe have like an infrastructure built better to withstand all these extremities that we are now facing. But all in all, we need to put more into agriculture so that they are able to produce more for us. Because without them, we don't have food. We're seeing less and less food, increasing price of food. So we need to help them to help us, as well as the growing population.
Absolutely. And also the potential for Malaysia to be a regional solution provider, not just one that is, as you mentioned, consuming or using technology, right?
Exactly. So we have to be the one leading the pack because we have smart people here. We have a lot of good researchers with good research. We want to be the one leading and showcasing that this technology works in Malaysia. Then we bring it over regionally or globally for them to adopt, and we curate it. We collect data from that particular part of the world to then curate it best for them there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Amirul, thank you so much for the conversation today. And of course, all the best to Carbotech moving forward for 2026. Well, that's an example of what moving upstream does look like, applying science to real world problems, creating higher value income, and also building resilience into the economy. My thanks to Amirul American, co-founder and chief operations officer, Carbotech, for joining us. That's all we have time for today. Join us next week for more economic analysis and insights. I'm Tamina Kausji, signing off for now.
Hamas says it is fully prepared to hand over administrative authority in Gaza to a newly formed Palestinian Technocratic Committee. The US president cannot threaten his way into owning Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark.
Thanks for joining us. This is The Economy with me, Ibrahim Sani. We are celebrating the Chinese New Year, the Lunar Festival, this week, and we are also trying to understand a little bit better in terms of how the 2026 year is going to pan out. After much ado about the ASEAN summit last year and some understanding into how the year is shaping up, we would like to see how the next maybe 10 to 12 months is going to shape up when it comes to investing. Joining us online is Tan Sri Andrew Sheng, the financial columnist that everybody knows and love. Tan Sri, Sini Kuala, Kongsi Fachai, Konghe Pachoy. Let's talk about investing in the year of the fire horse, and perhaps do a stock take before we jump into the whole crux of which class assets and stuff like that. How has investing been over the past maybe 12 months?
Well, this year is the year of the snake, and the snake goes up and down. And exactly as the general astrological prediction over the snake, it went up a little bit. Then the Trump tariff hit us in April. It went down quite a lot. Those people who bought at the bottom of that made a lot of money. Now, in a broad sense, last year was quite an exceptional year for investors worldwide. The average return on the S&P 500, it was around 12-13%, much better than expected. Most investors, if they had invested in the emerging markets, for China, elsewhere, Singapore, Japan, they would have done, near between 20 to 25%. So, and what was most exceptional last year was that metal prices went up significantly. Gold was up 65%, silver was up 151%. So those people who went early into gold, did strike gold, as you can say. So, last year from the investor was an exceptional year. I would say it was exceptional. A lot of frights. So the economies in the world did not tank. The trade tariffs settled down from the American average tariff rate went up from roughly 3%. Today would be around 13-14%. And, if you really look at the recent agreement with India, it's about 18%. Malaysia, ASEAN, mostly around 19%. Favored countries would get 10% to 15%. So the American economy turned out to be a year that was quite resilient. The bigger picture is that the stock market is booming because Mr. Trump keeps on calling for lower interest rates. And this year went with a bang. It went with a bang because of two things. The first was the excursion into Venezuela, which shocked everybody. Then he called for the maybe Denmark or Europe would like to give up Greenland, which then shocked the Europeans. The Europeans are, thought that all the attacks were against the rest of the world. It turned out that they were also in Mr. Trump's crosshairs. And then, of course, from the financial markets, what really shocked everyone was the threatened prosecution against the chairman of the US Fed, Mr. Jay Powell. Now, that is, from most former central bankers, is a no-no. And I think it sparked off the not just the gradual depreciation of the dollar, and of course the spike of the gold price to over 5,500, which everybody thought would be the price by the end of this year. So even this year has started with a bang in terms of financial markets. So investors, should now look at it. If you're taking the year as a whole, and I use again the astrological aspect, this is the year of the galloping horse, the fire horse, which means that it will be highly energetic. But a galloping horse goes up and down also, just like a snake. And so, you have to look at the overall picture from that perspective. Now, let me very quickly summarize three major lessons that I see for 2026. I think the World Bank, IMF is looking at the rest of the world, the whole world growth, as flattish. That means, the overall growth is slowing down gradually since the pandemic. The World Bank thinks it will be around global growth around 2.3%. The United Nations thinks it's about 2.7%. The advanced markets, the developed markets, are supposed to be flattish, with the United States around 2%, Europe around 1.3%, and Japan, I guess, is doing very flat. And then, China will be around 4%. These are the big economies. India is the exception, but it's slowing down somewhat. They think it will slow down from 7.4% to 6.6%. So the broad picture is that the IMF, World Bank, is somewhat cautious. The world is still in deflation. Inflation does not seem to rise too much. Despite the problems in the Middle East, oil prices only sparked up slightly. Brent is now $68, $69 per barrel. We do not see high spikes of inflation. So the broad picture is that the world is sanguine. I mean, it looks okay. It looks okay. From the market's point of view, I think I was earlier in the year, late last year, a little bit worried, but I thought that the World Bank forecast for next year is probably too cautious. Now, the second point that I really want to make is that the bandwidth of risks have widened quite considerably. Okay, Mr. Trump, can push the markets quite a lot up and down. But from a financial markets point of view, this year is going to be particularly interesting because the Mr. Trump wants to win his midterm elections, which will be in November, which is why he wanted interest rates to go down for two reasons. Number one, the lower the interest rate, the higher the stock market, the higher the bond market, and of course the higher the real estate market. But Mr. Powell, the existing Fed, is very slow in cutting interest rates. which is why he needs to get a new chairman in. And if the new chairman in and begins to cut rates, the markets could have some upside. That's the kind of general broad picture. And of course, if the dollar starts weakening, and the dollar has been weakening roughly 10% in the last year or so, the global picture is that a weak dollar is good for the world economy and also good for financial markets, because the dollar being the major currency, squeezes the liquidity. A strong dollar shrinks the economy because all the money goes to the United States. The depreciation of the dollar causes a de-dollarization exercise, which is why money is flowing back, and Malaysia has been a beneficiary. The ringgit has been one of the strongest emerging market currencies, increasing 10%, literally in the last 4 or 5 months. So that's the broad picture, in a nutshell.
There's a lot that I can slice and dice on that one, but perhaps we'll go into specifics. Let's talk about the bond market. There's a lot of reports showing that countries are now dumping US T-bills, and it's being bought up by folks like in the developing world. Yield curve is steepening. We're looking at bond market being quite an interesting time to get into. How do you see large players, in the likes of sovereign funds and other large PE players come into play, taking a position on fixed income? Do you think that is a situation where we're going to see a little bit more interdimensional play between how players view the bond market for this year?
Okay, I'm overall not so optimistic about the bond market. And the reason why I'm not optimistic of the bond market, particularly from the retail point of view, there's a wholesale guys who are into the bond market, and then there's a retail guy. Even for the wholesale guys, of course they see Mr. Trump wanting to cut interest rates, and if he cuts interest rates, the tradition is that the yield curve then should steepen. The Fed will cut interest rates, and the yield curve will steepen. The long bond remains high. U.S. 10-year treasuries around 4.15 to 4.2% range, right? And then what the Fed would normally do is to cut the short-term interest rates, right? And then the yield curve steepens, and if it moves down slightly, bond prices are overall up. But the big problem in all this picture is that Japan, which is the largest surplus country, domestic interest rates are rising. And domestic interest rates are rising, and domestic inflation are rising. So, and the yen has been extremely weak. Now, with the new prime minister, who is somewhat hawkish overall, on the conservative side, she has to maintain inflation at a stable rate, which means that they will raise interest rates. And when they raise interest rates, the Japanese interest rate has been very low because inflation in the past has been very low, but now inflation has gone up because the yen is too cheap. The result is, if the Japanese, are concerned over monetary policy, you will want to raise rates. And when you raise rates, the yen will appreciate. When the yen appreciates, the largest dollar holders are the Japanese, and they would then sell dollar assets, of which would be included, dollar bonds, right? Now, the Chinese have been, reducing dollar bonds, and partly moving into gold, right, and something else for geopolitical reasons. The Japanese have to do this to protect themselves from foreign exchange losses. So, to a large extent, the long bond for the Japanese long bond has high volatility because of this uncertainty. The U.S. one would depend very much how the Fed conducts its monetary policy, because if the new Fed governor becomes more quantitative easing, he will not only lower interest rates, he will start buying long bonds to get the the long bond price yield also come down. So because other peoples are selling, right? So the U.S. Fed will start collecting U.S. Treasuries, and that means that bond market is only for the expert, not for the retail.
Yeah.
And speaking as a retail investor, that means I'm too small to count. I'm only managing. I want to declare my interest. I don't advise anybody. No funds, no nothing. Right. For profit, I do some free advisory work for basically think tanks and all that. But but this is not for profit, and so I only manage my own retirement assets. So I'm not into bonds, and the reason retail is not in bonds is that the interest rate at 4%. If the retail your intermediary charges you 1% to buy or sell, the buy and sell will cost you 2%, so your net yield is 2%, and then if the interest rate up and down, you're not going to get much money. So, given the risk profile at this point of time for the retail, I would tend to avoid bonds. That's my personal view. Different people have different risk appetites and concerns. So to me, the bond issue, if I'm a risk prudent guy, putting money in a bank deposits or putting money into a bank share that gives you a dividend of 6%, 5 to 6%, is far better than trying to put money in a bond market, which I have risks that I can't control.
Therefore, it's nicely that we move from fixed income to equities right now. Valuations are going to be a key feature. Investors are looking beyond the revenue and the bottom line. They're looking at how geopolitics is coming to play. One area of I wouldn't say concern, but rather a viewpoint to look at is on the semiconductor players, the tech players, especially those that are moving into AI, agentic AI. Some companies like Nvidia, Google, Meta, Apple, for instance, those are going to be some of the focus areas, at least for the US market, globally as well. Some Chinese companies are also taking some interest from retail players that are going into equities. Where do you see the whole idea of valuations going to shape up? And how do you see equities being seen as the favored asset class of investment during the year of the fire horse?
Well, I think equities and commodities at the present moment are the two areas which mainstream investors are looking at. Okay, now the reason why equities are still appealing is that if you really think through this, the risk return, an investor has three considerations, right? Basically, your risk, right? Your liquidity, and your protection of your principal, right? And so the risk issue is that if the return is high, right, but your principal can be lost, completely. Obviously, it depends upon your age. If you're a very young person who has a lot of risk appetite, it's not a problem to go for the higher risk assets. If you're very conservative, you're growing older, you prefer a very steady income and no loss of your principal. So everything is a liquidity, risk return, and principal store value issue. At this point of time, given the massive geopolitical, technological risk issues, equity has been favored because the risks may be there, but the returns have been very high. And the U.S. market has been very strong because of the Magnificent Seven. The Magnificent Seven is now 1/3 of the market cap of the United States stock market. But the stock market is now twice the US GDP, one of the highest ever. So if you are now scared of the dollar, or you want to diversify for various reasons, and some people, are questioning whether there's an AI bubble. I'll go into that detail later. The correct strategy is to kind of underweight the U.S. stock market and invest in emerging markets and elsewhere. For example, Japanese market is going up quite a lot for reasons, when the Japanese sell US dollar, they bring back into yen. And when they're into yen, they can't buy bonds because bonds has a high risk, as I explained before. So they pile into equities, which is, Japanese market for a long time has been undervalued. And so they're piling into Japanese equities, right? This is Japanese investors piling back into Japanese equities issues. So if we were to look at the U.S. stock market, the crucial where it will go depends not just the macro situation where interest rates are, but whether the profits of the tech industry will continue to be strong. Now, here is the subtle issue here. As you know, a lot of the reason why the tech is doing very well is the AI technology boom. Okay, and the AI technology boom is including semiconductors, is really about what Jensen Huang said. The AI boom is about energy. If you got no energy, you can't go into AI. You cannot make chips. You cannot do cyber currencies. You mine Bitcoin using energy. And if you don't have energy, you can't mine Bitcoin, right? The cyber currencies and such. You want to do AI, large models, you need a lot of energy, right? And you need a lot of high-powered chips. Okay, so the AI story is a little bit like the gold rush. Who makes money? Is it the miner or is it the shovel supplier? And in many cases, the miners don't make that much money. They go into the California gold rush, they go to Alaska, they go into the wilderness. They have to eat, so they have to buy food, they have to buy the shovels. It's the guy who sells the shovels and the food that make a lot of money, and the chance of hitting gold may not be that high, but the risk is worth it. So what is now happening in the tech industry is that the infrastructure shovel providers like NVIDIA, the super chips, have very high valuation. They're going to make the money, right? And then the big infrastructure guys like Amazon Cloud, Meta, Google, or all this. And now I'm not recommending these shares. I'm just giving you an illustration. They seem to be doing well, whereas the OpenAI, the small model builders who have not yet listed are struggling because they're burning cash investing in their new models, and they're not sure whether their cash flow will justify their current valuation. So if there was and I'm saying this, nobody knows for sure, if the valuation of some of these model makers, happen to tank, it will hurt the valuation of the chip producers, etc., which means that there are some downside to the tech industry. And you have to be very knowledgeable about this industry in order to invest in it. The real risk is, of course, you can be a momentum player. We just follow the crowd, right? And you just buy a QQQ, which is a technology ETF equivalent, right? To manage that. But my own philosophy is, the tech risks is not something I personally fully understand. Because even though I live in the Silicon Valley of Southeast Asia, Penang, but I'm not engaged enough in Silicon Valley and also the high-tech areas of China to be able to appreciate how to benefit from that tech boom as such. So overall, my bottom line is that the stock markets this year will still be where the action is. Where you make money depends upon your actual sector allocation. Okay, right? Where the sector allocation means where you put your money in which geography, in which market, in which segment. Is it going to be technology? Is it going to be financial? Is it going to be commodities? Is it going to be what, right? So the sector allocation and the geographical allocation, including the duration, which is you want to go long-term, if you do go for a long-term play or a short-term play, becomes very important.
The next area of concern is on our home ground, Malaysia. Harkening back to what you said earlier on, Tan Sri, that the World Bank and the IMF will see a flattish growth towards 2026. Malaysia has targeted around 5.0 to 5.5 economic growth. Our competitors, like Vietnam, for instance, is registering in the low tens. Singapore, as a developed market, is quite interesting, growing far more than what a developed nation would normally grow at about 2 to 3%. Do you think that first, is a 5.5% growth attainable? Second, is it even possible to even grow more than that in order for us to keep pace with the growth of our similar economies in this part of the world?
Well, coming back to the Malaysian economy, the first thing to remember about the economy and investing is that the economic growth is a macro picture which may not necessarily be related to the stock market, which is more a micro picture.
Yeah.
Now, what do I mean by that? The best example is that the fastest growing economy in the world over the last 40 years has been China. But if you have invested in the Chinese stock market, you have some very rapid ups and then downs. And overall, over that 40 years, you haven't done that well, put it this way. Recently it's been done better. I use it as an example.
Yes.
Good macro growth does not necessarily mean good stock market return. Is one thing a lot of people don't quite understand this. They listen to some, stock market analysts. They say, country A is doing well, therefore the stock market must be doing well, right? Not necessarily so. There are special reasons why the stock market could not do well, or even the economic growth may not be well, but the stock market could be doing very well, particularly in certain sectors, all right? So here's the issue for Malaysia. The Malaysian market, if you really look at Malaysian stock market, Malaysian economic growth has been pretty steady. We've actually been recovering. But the stock market has been flat for quite a long time, all right? And only recently, that local investors and foreign investors have been, in fact, if we look at the Bursa numbers, foreign investors into the Malaysian stock market have been selling, whereas Malaysia, which is a surplus savings economy, we've been buying, but the market has been flat. And now only recently the ringgit's gone up, and suddenly the rest of the world's, hey, this is a market that hasn't gone up. The economic fundamentals are pretty good. The ringgit is beginning to appreciate. Let's pile in. And because we're a relatively small market, I think the potential for the Malaysian stock market to move upwards is quite high. Okay, but Malaysia is such a small stock market player relative to the global picture, is that global shifts can rapidly change that. So, you must remember, when you invest, it's not just about the local condition, but the global condition. And Malaysia being an open economy, you have to take into consideration both the global condition and the local condition. So, when you invest in the Malaysian stock market, you must look at the perspective from your own position. Nobody can advise you on this. You have to understand your own appetite for risk, where you want to allocate, how you study the market, and actually, do it balanced or higher risk, and where you put. So overall, the reason why the EPF and all the others have been doing very, very well is because they have been investing in foreign assets, in foreign stocks, and the foreign stocks have done very well. The U.S. stock market has been, going literally, the indices have gone, 10, 12% above average for the last 5-10 years. And in specific areas doing even better than that. And the ringgit has depreciated. So, our major, pension funds a portion of which is invested abroad, has done very, very well, right? And now that the people are beginning to look at the Malaysian stock market, if the sentiment continues, the prospects of upgrowth can be quite good. But again, it's not that I am not in the short medium term overall sanguine and on the bullish side. I have to caution, at the back of everybody's investor's mind is that Mr. Trump can change the game overnight, and accidents, geopolitical accidents, can happen overnight. Now, as you know, within the ASEAN, there have been little ripples here and there. The Indonesian stock market, had a little bit of a rout. The good news, of course, is that Thailand has now a good election. The government is now stabilized, right? And of course, in Japan, we now have a very strong prime minister with a mandate, for change. So overall, the overall context for 2026 would seem to be a galloping horse, but a galloping horse can also stumble. So you always must have in mind, that the general direction may be reasonable, good, but the accident can happen. And when let's say there's a shock, a lot of people lose money because they panic and they don't look at the long medium term. So ultimately, where you pick your stocks, is very critical.
Thank you very much, Tan Sri. How are you celebrating your New Year this year with family, I suppose?
This year I'm staying in Penang. My family are coming this year, so it should be great fun.
Thank you very much, Tan Sri Andrew Shang. That was Tan Sri Andrew Shang, a retired central banker who once served as the chairman of the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission. He was also an advisor for the China Banking Regulatory Commission, as well as board of director for Khazanah National Berhad. Today and these days, he's a financial commentator and, of course, an analyst when it comes to looking at how the markets behave. That was Tan Sri Andrew Shang. Catch you in the next one. Sering Kuala, Kosi Pachai, and happy Chinese New Year.
Saya pilih Unify Business.
Mereka ada penyelesaian untuk kejayaan yang lebih jelas. Unify Business Mobile, majukan saya. Go Bukit, uruskan segalanya.
Internet grade perniagaan, meluaskan rangkaian.
Solusi pemasaran digital, melebarkan capaian. Layanan prioriti, menyinangkan lagi perniagaan.
Perkembangan digital meningkat pantas dengan program Impact Biz.
Tingkatkan perniagaan anda dengan Unify Business hari ini.
Hamas says it is fully prepared to hand over administrative authority in Gaza to a newly formed Palestinian Technocratic Committee. The US president cannot threaten his way into owning Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark.